All right. So we are the Cannabis Research and Development Team. I'm Seth, and we also had Austin and Talitha in the group. And so for who we are and what we are as a business, our name is Cannabis Studies and its Ultimate Potential, LLC. We are based out of Pueblo, Colorado, but we offer services throughout the state and can travel based upon where our customers are. Our mission is to use information regarding the public and cannabis to be able to gain better insight as far as patterns and trends involving marijuana at the societal level. And so, for as far as our management team, we first have our CEO Austin.
Hi, like I said, my name's Austin. I've been in the field for 10 years and counting, and I'm pretty dedicated to the study of cannabis, and I hope to be able to answer a lot of questions as time continues.
All right, and then like I said at the beginning, my name's Seth. I've been studying the cannabis field for about 8 years now, and ultimately just love to see the impact that it has on our society.
Hi, I'm Talitha. I've been in management for about 10 years, but recently, within the past four, have really been focused more on the research, and I can't wait to help everyone figure out what they need.
All right, and so that is our team. And so as far as what we how we're set up as a business, that's what kind of this flow chart um, gives us, as far as Austin being the CEO, and then myself and Talitha being able to conduct projects and operations underneath him with support from interns and other employees as well. Um, and so how we how we're structured somewhat as a company, and what we kind of do is we provide research in cannabis. So with that, our overhead and our startup costs are almost non-existent, to where with our research being biology or botany based, um, more of a more statistical base. With that, we definitely don't have as many day-to-day costs. And while we would initially require some capital to be able to get things up and running, we don't wouldn't require a lot of high tech equipment or space in the excess that would be the same as maybe a grow research operation would be. And so with that, we would expect to hopefully be able to pay back any investors relatively quickly. Um, it would it would depend somewhat on our market projections, but also at the same time, with cost being so low, it wouldn't be too much of a detriment to be able to pay back any investors. And like I kind of said with our projections, being that we're somewhat of a unique business, we believe that our services are unlike almost anything in the cannabis community, especially in Pueblo and in the rest of the state. And so with that, we feel that we'd be able to get our name out there, um, and be able to make progress as far as being a successful business. And so as far as the baseline of our business, we want to look at cannabis on more than just this plant level, but on this level of what a plant's relationship with people. And so our intent is to look at how it affects the public, and then present those findings to people in the cannabis industry, no matter what their business or endeavor might be, whether that be governments, having to look at cannabis and its effects um, on society, looking at how dispensaries want to increase their margins, looking at cannabis tourism, to see how those types of businesses can plead to make sure that they're addressing all customers. And so while these types of businesses, would be what we focus on, we expect that eventually to stay successful, we want to branch out and make sure that we are offering our services to all businesses in society so they can see how cannabis affects them. And that ranges from, clothing companies to bars and concerts and pretty much anything in between that where cannabis could make itself known and be profited on. And so we just intend to provide, a wide variety of research. So that way we're able to present a wide variety of findings and people can use us as a trusted source. We believe that marijuana will only increase in popularity in the US and around the world. And we hope to be able to capitalize off that network and be able to be a part of that community, starting in Colorado and then, like I said, everywhere. And then we hope that from what we're doing, that it becomes the new norm in the cannabis industry. And so, kind of to get into the details and the real bones of how this would all work, I'm gonna give some time to Austin here, and he's gonna go over some of the products and services.
Yep. So I mean, as you know, we're a research facility, so we don't have so much of a solid product, but what we're going to offer is knowledge, and we plan to share it with both our community and our government. Overall, I mean, our service is going to be knowledge, and so we plan to not focus on so much as one question and put all our effort into one project at a time. But we plan to work at a range of the questions that are up and needed to be answered by both the public and the government. While we do plan on helping the public have a smoother use of the cannabis, and we're going to work on the medicinal side of things, we also plan to answer government issues, such as how it impairs people while driving and how it might even affect drug tests at work and just future laws in general. Like I said, I mean, our main goal is to provide answers, but we also would like to try to create a pool of scientists to share information. So while we might be lacking it at our facility, we can get it almost like a library from another facility that offers up maybe a question that came up in our test that we needed an answer to, but we could find that answer and then continue on in our project and eventually hopefully start pushing out more answers more frequently to the many questions that people have. Like I said, we don't plan to create a competitive system, seeing that resources are so limited because right now there's not too much help from the federal government and a lot of it's kind of third party or maybe a couple grants here or there. But we are ready to make it competitive and we plan to stand out if need be, if some companies decide that they don't want to contribute to our pool of information. Um, like I said, our team aspires to answer the big questions and also have fast results, which is how we plan to stick out from the others. So the companies that don't want to share, we're going to have that pool, so we're going to be able to answer a little quicker. We're going to not have to need so much to keep running because we won't have to run them extra tests because we'll have other facilities helping us out a little bit, and that's kind of how we plan to stick out when compared to some of the other facilities. As far as our business plan goes, we're starting a little late, seeing that the legalization first started in California back in the late 90s, and now we're for medicinal. Now we're starting to see legalization happening seems like every year for recreational use in each state. But our plan is to kind of just jump on this curve because as I'll talk about earlier, although it's been almost 20 years since the first legalization, marijuana use and questions have been at all-time high and they just continue to rise. They haven't even shown a decrease since the 90s. And we don't even think that the high point of our business has even happened yet, considering that not all states are legalized. A lot of the world doesn't have it legalized, and so there's still limited resources, but lots of questions as far as what's going to happen. And we don't think that we will even see a drop in our facility for a while, just because of that fact that there's going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered as time continues. So here's some some stats that could go along with that. Our demographic as of right now, just in America, there's about 48.2 million users of cannabis. As you see at the bottom, it kind of is almost split exactly. There's almost 45% that any patient uses marijuana for medicinal use, and then there's a 55% rate of that 48 million that use it for recreational use. So we plan to kind of hit on both demographics. By the medicinal side, we're going to try to figure out the smoother, easier highs where they're not so rough and you don't get the kind of impairment that you don't want. And you're really getting the bonus side to the medical side. And as far as recreational, we're not going to so much promote that drowsy side, but we're going to help answer questions of impairment, how much is okay for them to have at work, and so on and so forth. Like I said earlier, I'd get into the stats. This is this is some information I pulled after looking at some charts and running some numbers. I don't know. There was when the drug campaign started, the marijuana use was actually at a rapid descent, but as soon as the late 90s hit and California was the first to take the big step, there was an immediate growth. Pretty much almost every year it's been almost 5%, which really doesn't seem like much, but I mean it's also gone up to 10% with states like uh Colorado. They've seen an 8% growth, and like I said, well, it doesn't seem like much, but when you take 8% of a whole state, one factor that I to kind of give that into perspective was there was a 1.6 billion gross from marijuana taxes when it was first legalized, and now in this past year, they've grown up to 6 billion. So we plan to just kind of grow alongside of that. I mean, obviously those $6 billion have a lot of people behind them, and they have a lot of questions, with a lot of people being first time users. So we kind of expect to have more questions and studies being done with the public, but also at the same time with the government trying to work its way into legalization. We plan to have at least a couple hundred questions that we might need answered as far as how it affects people's daily lives and why this should be legal versus other drugs, and kind of creating a system kind of like we have with alcohol, where we have ways to measure it and many other things such as that. The obvious competitors would be so far right now with limited funds are the colleges, just because they are offering less cost because they're not really requiring these big facilities because they already have them on campus, and they have students to pay, so which they not have their degree, so they're not having to pay them a lot. But the weakness to that would be kind of exactly that. I mean, they're not specialized solely in cannabis, and the fact that a lot of the workers they have would be students who are not graduated and fully understand the magnitude of how the drug affects people and just in general. While we do not plan to have high costs, we plan to kind of get around this because we're going to only try to hire licensed scientists that offer more accurate and have faster results, because then we're going to use that library to pull in information we don't have. And we're just kind of hoping to work our way around that. And although it costs a little more, you'll get the government and the civil area will have a more better hold on the information and better results ultimately. And then when the other obvious competitor that wouldn't be a school would just be the companies that decided they didn't want to help out with information, or the ones that are trying to get the big contracts, so they're not really willing to work with a lot of people. We just kind of plan to cut them out because eventually we would like to partner with some of the smaller firms and be able to grow a bigger range of scientists and pool of information, so that way we were all pushing out information, we're all kind of working with the grants, and it's not so much one company taking on the whole country as they legalize. Oh, and now it's time, I'm gonna pass it over to Talita and let her talk about the business strategy we have.
Thanks, Austin. So really what we have here is our business strategy and implementation. As we were developing this, we really looked at the SWOT method. So we'll start with our strengths and our weaknesses. So the marijuana industry is obviously a multi-billion-dollar industry that doesn't have any plans on slowing down. The research and development part of all these agencies is going to be pivotal when we're looking at the bigger picture. Cannabis research is needed, obviously, to continue to grow and understand the consequences, both good and bad, of cannabis use, and how that's going to impact the policies that the governments and the cities and states are really going to implement. Research is conducted to help support technology with the cannabis field. And within our personal agency, we actually have a very strong management team who all of us share a very common vision, and we have effective communication. Some of our weaknesses that we have is the cannabis studies, and the ultimate potential is delayed in the timing of entering the field. The good news is with that, to flow back to strengths, is that we are very detail oriented and vision oriented. The lack of funding opportunities from the state and federal sources, that's going to be a barrier for us. Lack of FDIC backed banking systems could become a potential barrier. Currently struggling to meet deadlines. Fiscal budgeting and projected income, a lot of what we have in place is hypothetical, and the company is in the developmental stages. And then next, we're going to look at opportunities and threats. So our opportunities would be that Pueblo, Colorado Springs, and Denver are central hubs for the marijuana-based business. Research is factored into both medical and recreational use of cannabis, and we're hoping to get into both aspects. We'll have a strong customer base between dispensaries, environmental conservation, government, police, schools, and the list could continue to go on. We'll have the opportunity for internships, so education opportunities for schools. So if we are able to partner with some of these smaller schools to help research, that would be ideal. And investment opportunities with strong returns. Some of the threats that we have is the marijuana industry is highly competitive. Like Austin had mentioned earlier, we're not trying to create a competitive environment, but we're also not scared to compete. Current research is focused on the harmful effects of cannabis use and the potential harms, and that could potentially harm future funding. What our ideal goal isn't to look at only the harmful effects, but also the beneficial effects that cannabis can have from an individual all the way up to a government. Environmental issues with growing marijuana crops, federal restrictions, and anti-marijuana campaigns or fear mongering. And next, we have our estimated financial budget. What we're hoping to find is grants and investors that are wanting to figure out a good pathway and good research and have ethical research that backs us. Obviously, we have operating costs. But as you can see at the very bottom, our cumulative retained surplus, it just has exponential growth. And that's what we're expecting from this business.